says, to the end that men ought always to pray. That means you are only exempted from prayer if you are not a man. Provided you are a man, prayer is not for prayer warriors. Prayer is not for men of God. Prayer is for men. He spake a parable to the end that men ought always to pray and not to faint. 1 Thessalonians 5:17. The Bible says pray without ceasing. It doesn't mean pray from morning till night. It means be consistent. Be consistent in your prayer life. James 5, when you read from verse 13 down, the Bible says, is any man afflicted? It says, let him pray. Then the Bible says, the fervent and effectual prayer of the righteous availeth much. Are we together? And then the Bible now uses a personality to personify the ministry of prayer. It says Elijah was a man of like passion, and that he prayed earnestly over a space of 3.5 years that there be no rain. And then there was no rain, and he prayed again and rain came. That means there was nothing special, as it were, about Elijah, except that when he stepped into that dimension of priesthood, he functioned like God. Are we together now? This is very, very important. Prayer is important. One time Jesus was with the disciples and having a conversation with Peter. He rebuked Peter and said, Peter, Satan desired to sift you like wheat. It didn't say I advised you. It didn't say I counseled you. So instability is remedied by prayer. He has desired to sift you like wheat, but I have prayed for you that your faith fail not. He says when you are converted, use this same strategy to strengthen your brethren. That means when you see them swaying, is proof that something is happening to their priesthood. You must get them back to the point where they pray. That men ought always to pray and not to faint. That men ought always to pray and not to faint. That men ought always to pray and not to faint. One of the dominion systems allocated for the saints is the ministry of prayer. It's a principle of spiritual legislature. God gave us authority. Listen very carefully. Over principalities and powers and so on and so forth. Listen, a believer who does not pray will not be able to walk in the full expression of the counsel of God. This is true. For many reasons. Number one, because God gave man a will. This is very important. One of the fundamental things, there are 7 fundamental things God gave man, not a believer, man, as the zenith of his creation. One of it is the power to choose. Are we together? I set before you blessing and cursing, life and death. I only advise you. I will not force you. So God gave man the power to choose. The power to choose mandates that you must always, God cannot assume that you need his assistance. God cannot assume that you need help. God cannot assume that you need the intervention of heaven. You must verbalize your request. You must verbalize your need. You invite God to your life on legal basis. Even salvation is not imparted outside of your will. He loves you and he's made the way, but he will allow your desire and your hunger to call upon him. The Lord is nigh them that call upon him, not them that need him. Them that call upon him. Are we together, please? So the fact that God gave man a will, he is ever respectful of that will. I can choose to ignore God. I can choose as an act of my volition that, Lord, I'm not interested in your program for my life, and he will honor it. At the expense of the eternal destiny of many, God still allows them to declare their need for him. There are people going to hell every day in spite of the fact that the substitutionary sacrifice of Christ is a done deal. Are we together? This is very, very powerful. Prayer is important. Your priesthood is important because it is the system that outsources strength from a dimension that is not earthly. Number 2, prayer